Hello, learners. Welcome to Science with Mr. Salim. Today, we're going to talk about social implications of physical changes. In our previous lessons, we have been talking about the physical changes that occurs in boys, and also we talked about the physical changes that occurs in girls. Now, these physical changes normally lead to something called social implications. Yeah. So it affects the social behavior of an adolescent. Okay. So when you're talking about the social implications, this is more of something that affects their emotions or affects their feelings. Yeah. That's the difference between physical and social. Social is something to do with emotions, but then with physical, it's something that you can see. So what you're going to talk about is the feelings, how these physical changes affects their feelings and all that. So we're going to start with the first one, which is shyness. Okay. So how does this happen, or what is caused by this shyness in both boys and girls? All right. So what normally happens is that with boys, they tend to feel uncomfortable with their voice that deepens. Maybe they were used to certain voice, but then at some point they feel like their voice has now deepened. All right. So affects their voice is that what affects them in terms of their emotion is that their voice deepens. Okay. When their voice deepens, this is for the boys. For the boys, yeah, for boys. So this voice, which is deep, or the deep voice, affects them, and this makes them feel uncomfortable and shy. Okay, so this is something that also affects them. And then we also have for the girls, what happens is that they feel shy again, yeah. But then what makes them feel shy? The enlarged breasts. The enlarged breast for girls, yeah. So we can see this affects them in terms of their emotions. So for the girls, when the breast enlarges or grows, okay, what happens is that they tend to feel shy. When the breast, you know, grows, this is for girls, or their breast enlarged, this makes them feel uncomfortable and they tend to start feeling shy and all that. So that's the first social implication that affects an adolescent. Remember, we said an adolescent is a person who is going through the period of adolescence or has reached the age of puberty, which is maturity. Okay, fine. Let's move on to the second point. Another social implication that normally occurs in an adolescent is that they tend to feel embarrassed. Okay, so we can say embarrassment. Yeah, they tend to feel embarrassed. Okay, so that is what we call embarrassment. Now, what normally causes this embarrassment? You know, these changes we have said that it affects both the boys and girls, emotionally. So when they tend to start feeling like there are some few changes that occurs, they tend to start feeling embarrassed. Now for example, the boys, you say that the boys start to they mature. Okay, once they have matured, what happens is that they can start releasing what we call the male sex cell, which is the sperms. All right, so when they release the sperm, this is something that occurs, but then something that embarrasses most is that they normally have the dreams. Yeah, so in their dreams they release the sperm or the semen. They release the sperm or the semen. So when a boy wakes up in the morning and finds himself, like he has released the sperm, while asleep, they get to, tend to be embarrassed. So what we can say is that embarrassment, this is for boys, yeah. So boys gets embarrassed when they release semen, or we can semen, or we can say sperm while sleeping. Yeah. So this comes through, what we call wet dreams. So they dream about this. Okay. So in simple terms, you can just say they experience what we call wet dreams. So these wet dreams normally makes the boys uncomfortable. So once they wake up and they find themselves in that state, that feels awkward, yeah? So that awkwardness makes them feel embarrassed as well. Okay, good. So let's move on to the next one, which is the boys. This for the girls. We have said the embarrassment occurs to the boys, but then at the same time, this also happens to the girls. Now, what do you think makes the girls feel embarrassed? Of course, you mentioned that there are also something that, when the girls grow, they become mature as well. So when they get mature, what happens is that they also release the eggs. You say these eggs will have, like, they have been inside the female's body since they were, born. But then when they get to that adolescence, that's when now these eggs has to be released. Now, these eggs normally get released, but then we say that if they don't get fertilized, what happens? They come out, they come out, and then this is the process whereby we find that the girls normally experiences the menstruation and all that. So we've said that the boys gets embarrassed because they release the semen, or sometimes it's the sperm that comes out while they're asleep. So this is wet dreams. Okay. Now with girls, they also mature, right? When they mature, they release eggs. These are the female sex cell. Now, in the process, there is what we call, when these eggs are not fertilized and all that, what happens is that they tend to come out of the body, right? So, in the process, this causes what we call menstruation. Menstruation is a monthly period that girls normally experience. So, what we can say is that for girls, or with girls, gets embarrassed when they start experiencing when they start experiencing menstruation flow. You said the menstruation flow is the same as monthly period, okay? So we can just simply write here MP, monthly period. Okay, that's okay. So let's move on to the third point. Okay, so there is something that normally also, happens in an adolescent. This is that they normally get too attached with friends, okay? They get attached to friends. So you find that it's not easy for an adolescent to just stay alone. They tend to find friends. They want to make more friends, yeah? So that's something that normally happens. So let's say making friends, yeah? So they normally want to make friends, right? So in the process of making friends, there is something that also needs to come into our mind, When you're making friends, what type of friend do you think you're supposed to make? You're supposed to have a friend who is a responsible friend, someone who can, cannot, affect you in a negative way, but then someone who can, can encourage you to be a better person, okay? So when we are making friends, yes, it's good to have friends, it's good to socialize. This is a good skill that a person should have. If you don't have social skills, then it becomes a problem. When you become an adult, you can't even interact with people, you can't even seek for jobs because you don't know how to interact, yeah? So making friends is a good thing, but remember, we're supposed to have responsible, friends. We're supposed to make friends, but then we look for friends whom we feel they are responsible. They won't they won't like make us to go astray on all that. I hope it's clear. So one of the things for both boys and girls, they tend to have their group, and then in that group they have to they make friends and all that. But then if you want a better group, find a group that is responsible, friends who are responsible and all that. I hope that's clear. Perfect. Let's move on to the next one. So because now they have friends, something else that normally comes out is that they want to, they want to feel important. These others, they are there in their cycle. They want to be in their groups, right? But in these groups as well, they want to feel important. So most most adolescents normally tend to feel, they are like worth it, yeah. So they need to feel important. So that's something else that normally occurs. When they're in their cycle and in their groups, they tend to feel important. They want to feel important. So what happens is that if you look down upon them, they feel bad, right? So that's another point we can add, because they feel important and all that, they feel like because now they have grown, they've become like taller, they have gained weight and all that, they want to now feel like, they feel like adults or act like adults. Act like adults. They want to feel like, okay, I'm important, right? I can give my point, I can talk, people should listen. So, but then you don't have to be like extreme, when you want to talk or you want to be, listened to. What you need to know is that we have talked about how you're supposed to have, responsible friends, but then you're also supposed to know how you're supposed to communicate with people. Most teenagers normally tend to lack, empathy, and they don't understand when they are talking. They don't feel like they are annoying someone, especially their parents. Okay, so you need to know how you can communicate to people. You need to know how your tone is. You don't raise your voice to the adults. You're not supposed to be harsh and all that, even to the younger ones. Yeah, so you know how to relate with people. It's very important. So because you want to act like adults, there are things you can do. Maybe you can be, take things serious. You own up your studies. You can initiate things that can help your community. Those are things that you can do, and this makes you act like an adult, right? But then there are things that you're not supposed to do, because some adults do them, because now the adults are doing it, you want to also do it. Like, for example, you're not supposed to indulge yourself in premarital sex, that is like having, intercourse before you marry and things like that. So those are things that, the adolescent wants to act like adults, but these are things that they're not supposed to do. So sometimes you tend to avoid not sometimes, you're completely not allowed to, indulge yourself in those kind of things, okay? So acting like adults, there are things that you can do. You can give your opinions if you feel like this is something that makes sense. I feel maybe if they buy it, this can help us. Maybe in class, maybe during studies, maybe at home. You can clean the compound, you can, do a lot of shows that shows, okay, now I'm mature enough, I am grown up, But then there are things that you have to avoid, like we have said already. Okay, perfect. Now, I can also, get to another point, because now they want to act like adults. Some of them get to be, under peer pressure. So what we call is, we can say they get to be affected by peer pressure. So this is still social behavior, right? Because peer pressure is something that comes from your friends, from the peers. Peers is a group of people. So peer pressure, you find that adolescents normally tend to follow the, there is this word called bandwagon. They just want to follow the wave, yeah? So you're not supposed to follow the wave, you're supposed to follow what you think is right. You avoid what is wrong, and you do what you think is right. Is that okay? So peer pressure is normally there, but for you to be smart enough, you need to know that there are some risky behavior. There are some risky behavior. This risky behavior can be in terms of, getting indulged in in drug abuse and all that. So when you have this kind of peer pressure, you try to, catch you that kind of group, or you try to guide your friends that they shouldn't do that. They should avoid it. So we know peer pressure is there, but we are not supposed to indulge in it. You know what happens is that when you get into peer pressure, this can lead to a lot of bad things. Okay, let me just note some of them down here so that you can see what peer pressure can lead to. Okay, so this peer pressure, we say, it can lead to some things like, one, it can lead to, school dropout. You've had some, learners dropping out of school because of their peer pressure and bad behavior. So another thing is that it can lead to, maybe we said, risky behavior like, drug abuse. Okay, and also sometimes early pregnancy. And these are not all things that we need. We need ourselves to grow. We need to learn and all that. So if you risk your learning, you risk your life and everything else. Okay, so this is very important. You're supposed to note that you're supposed to avoid all these things that might cause problems in your life. Okay, then the seventh one is that this is something that normally happens also with the adolescents. They normally have what we call mood swings. Moods, like, they have the feeling. So the moods can either be maybe sad, happy, okay? So they tend to be either sad, sometimes you just find them sad, or happy, okay? So all these are, mood swings. So there are times happy, there are times sad, there are times confused, these things happens. But what you need to know is that you're supposed to have like a mentor, someone whom you can look forward to, someone whom you feel like when you're confused, when you're sad, when you're happy, you can talk to them, and they can help you. Sometimes people get frustrated, and these days, like it happens. Even kids normally get stressed these days. It's not like something, for the old, but then even kids get stressed. So if you have a problem, make sure you have someone whom you can talk to, share with, and can guide you. And also another thing that can help you to cope up with mood swings is that you're supposed to indulge in positive leisure. Positive leisure is like sports, you can do some things that helps you to feel happy, but at the same time you're benefiting, like that. So I think that's it. So that's the end of our lesson for today, and I'll see you in our next lesson. Bye.